While being simplistic is, I think, bad, being unduly complex is equally bad. You don't improve yourself by just being complicated. And Donald Trump remains one of the most complex figures in modern politics. While his comments on denuclearization yesterday might on the surface appear statesmanlike and even reasonable, they don't erase his fundamentally uh, acquisitive instincts, his vanity or his unpredictability, all qualities that make him as dangerous a figure on the world stage as Vladimir Putin or Kim Jong un. His transactional approach to diplomacy, his obsession with personal legacy, his tendency to wield power arbitrarily should raise alarm bells for allies and adversaries alike. One of the most illustrative aspects of Trump's worldview is his overt desire to reshape global reality through sheer economic leverage and negotiation. And unfortunately, the media has lent him this power by constantly writing about this new transactional way of doing global diplomacy. It's not new. This is something that goes all the way back to ancient Rome, even beyond that, to the Spice Road. It's it's not new at all. But we have empowered this monster, and his interest in acquiring Greenland for its mineral wealth, for its position, his administration's influence over the Panama Canal through the sale of the Chinese company Hutchinson's control of its ports, even the suggestion that Canada could be absorbed into the USA's 51st state nonsense, all highlights a perspective in which sovereignty and national wealth and national strength are matters of trade rather than principles of international law. And while Putin pursues land through military aggression, Trump seeks influence and acquisition through economic coercion. But the underlying mindset is eerily similar. Both see the world as a chessboard where might, whether economic or military, dictates control. And the question of Trump's second visit to the United Kingdom has reignited discussions about his divisive presence. And Sadiq Khan, the mayor of London, has made it clear that protests are inevitable. They're an inevitable feature of Trump's return, a legitimate expression of democratic freedom. At the same time, the UK must uphold the principle that a state visit once offered should not be revoked based on public opinion or shifting political tides. The principle of hospitality overrides our worries about Trump's personality. If we were daring enough to issue the invitation in the first place, which maybe we shouldn't have done, that tradition of not inviting the same person twice to a state visit is there for a good reason, frankly. Then, if we've broken that tradition, then it's up to us to continue to take responsibility for that decision making. And the Trump baby blimp may well reappear over London and more, and the city's streets will be filled with demonstrators and more. But this part of the democratic fabric that both the UK and the US claim to cherish must be supported. Trump's supporters, in turn, including Vice President J.D. Vance, Trump, the gerbil who's accused Britain of suppressing free speech, must see that free speech is alive and well and out to hector the President of the United States. Vance and others seem to misunderstand that the very act of protest is a testimony to free expression, not a limitation of it, and we must make sure that the new Home Office rules don't impede the expression of protest. Trump's, not that it would do any good, it's not going to change anything. And it's important to recognize that as well. Again, that dichotomy. Trump's recent statements on nuclear weapons add yet another layer to this discussion. His call for global denuclearization, while superficially appealing, is detached from reality, given his own administration's withdrawal from arms control treaties in his last presidency. The US, Russia, and China are all modernizing their nuclear arsenals, and while Trump's rhetoric may appeal to a certain audience, his past actions suggest a lack of true commitment to arms reduction. More concerning for Britain is the question of Trident, the UK's nuclear deterrent, which remains heavily dependent on US cooperation. Trump's history of transactional diplomacy means that the UK cannot take for granted continued access to American nuclear support, forcing policymakers in London to consider contingency plans, including closer collaboration with France. And this brings us back to the fundamental issue of Trump's character. He is at once an isolationist and also an interventionist, a nationalist and a businessman who sees borders as negotiable assets. His charisma cannot be denied. Indeed, figures like J.D. Vance amplify his appeal, lending him a sense of ideological coherence which masks his impulsivity. Is that a word? This desire to be impulsive. But none of this negates the reality that Trump's approach to power, his belief that deals rather than principles should govern the world, places him in a similar category to Putin. His methods may differ, but his ambition to reshape the world in his own image makes him a destabilizing force in exactly the same way as Putin is a destabilizing force, as Kim Jong-un is a destabilizing force. So as Britain prepares for another Trump visit, it must do so with clear-eyed pragmatism. Protests will happen, as they should. The state visit will proceed, as it must, but beyond the bluster and the spectacle, there remains the more pressing question: how does Britain, and indeed how does the world, manage the return of a leader who doesn't recognize the conventional boundaries of power? Trump's second term may offer a definitive answer to that, but it's not an answer that I think is going to give anybody great reassurance. And in the last month, just simply, or the last 6 weeks, simply looking at what has emerged from the Trump camp since his inauguration is a worrying preamble, a worrying harbinger of the rest of the 4 years. This is this is interesting times, and this is theatre and drama, and sometimes one just longs for something boring. This is not boring.